This tutorial is going to be a lot different than my other tutorials. In this tutorial, I'll be doing a video instead of a live stream, so there will be lots of edits. This tutorial is about how to make a 3D game that's projected on a 2D screen. We'll start off with the screen. Basically, what you'll want to do is get a cube. You don't have to use a cube, but it works best. Now you'll want to go to your gadgets, and over here I have sensors and input open. You'll find it all the way on the left. In here you'll find the laser scope. And with the laser scope, what you'll want to do is basically set a color for this to transition to. Well, I'll have it transition to black because that just fits really well with what we're going with. And in the laser scope, you want to set the range to 0, and you want to set the fall off to whatever you want the character's render distance to be. So over here, I'm just going to set it to, let's say, about 2 meters. Now what this allows is the detection of an object at range. So I'll move this away. You'll see the pixels white, and I'll move it closer. And the closer it gets, the more close to black the pixel gets. We'll be setting up the field of view for the character. So what you want to do is get the laser scope, and you want to put it horizontally like this. And with these pixels, you basically want to bring them into a separate space where the pixels and the laser scopes won't meet too much. Now what you want to do is just clone it a bit, about 45 degrees, and copy it. And you want to bring it whatever distance upwards you feel is nice. And basically every odd amount of numbers is going to give the entity the ability to see whatever is exactly in the middle. And any even number is going to erase that ability, but of course it will come back every odd number. And the better you want the eyesight, the more you'll duplicate it. So this is pretty good in one way, so we'll keep it. Now for the pixels, what you want to do is basically straighten them out. So you'll just press triangle while holding R2. It is a very good way to actually straighten objects out. So when you're finished straightening out the narrow band of the screen you've created, you'll want to do the same thing but horizontally. However, before we start, you'll want to group all of these scopes so that straightening out the screen will be easier when we finish doing it again. So rotate it 45 degrees, copy it. Now you'll want to copy it from the laser scopes so that keeping it on the same dimension will actually be a lot easier. Now make sure there's that 90-degree difference, and we can start pressing left or right on the D-pad to start adding clones. Fast forward. So once you finish with your screen, you'll want to do two things. The first thing you'll want to do is group your screen and the array separately. The easiest way to select this, again, is to double tap X on whatever. Of course, deselect the screen and group the array. So now that these two are in separate groups, they'll be easy to edit later. Now, of course, since the screen has its own groups inside of it, what you'll want to do is ungroup every band here. This makes it so that the gameplay thermo that this takes up is decreased by a large amount. With this finished, we can start doing other things, such as testing. Scope into the array and double select one of the laser scopes. Once you do this, we'll be able to tweak all of them at the same time and put it at a nice testing range. About 10 meters is pretty good. So now you'll want to create an object to put in front of the array to test it. So this object's going to be very big because the array is very big. And so, as you can see, it works. Now, the thing about using a sphere for testing is that you're going to get the middle that's, close, and everything around it that's a little bit further away. So it's a good way to test depth. One cool thing about this is that we can actually simulate double vision. So if we get this set up, we copy and paste it over here, and we mix the screens together into one. Move the circle into the middle. As you can see, you'll have the light circles and dark oval, which is usually what happens if you're focused on something that's a little in the distance and something circular is in front of you. So now let's start creating the project. You can create almost anything you want. For this tutorial, I'm just going to create a very simple one. So we'll just do a space that you can move around in. So here's my testing area. So now we have our environment set up. This puppet here is going to be the player. Now what you'll want to do with the puppet is to put it on remote control mode. This makes it so that the player does not have to possess the puppet in order to play this or move around in this. With this ability, now you'll want to give the imp a disability, such as its movement. One good way to disable an imp's movement is by using a camera. With this camera, we can also hide imps. Now we can't move the scene around. However, we can still move the puppet around. So now what we're going to do is get the array that we've made. And if you want to keep this as something separate, I would recommend saving it as a creation itself. But in this tutorial, I'm going to be, of course, using it. So now that you have your screen set up, what you'll want to do is take the array and group it into the puppet. You can group it into a specific limb, or you can just keep it in the puppet group. Grouping it into the head would be a pretty good idea. For this tutorial, I'm going to keep the array a certain distance away from the head. This is so I can touch on a specific problem that you might run into while creating this setup. So, I've shrunk the array without tweaking the laser scopes, so the character is going to have a very poor render distance. As you can see, I can only see walls from a very close range. Now the problem you might run into when working on a setup like this is something like this. So I'm walking to a wall, I can see the wall, I'm getting closer to it, but when I get close enough, something weird is happening. You can see that nothing's being detected in the middle, and everything's being detected around it. Why is that? Well, what's happening is that the laser scopes are in the wall a little bit. Now to fix this problem, you want to get the laser scopes, or this array, and you'll just want to put it a little inside the head. This is going to make it a little difficult to select, however, so I would recommend keeping some of it outside. Now there is a very useful button here called the Hide Everything Else button. What this does is just hides everything outside of the group that you're grouped into. With this ability, I can easily scope into the laser and change all the fall-offs to an appropriate range. So now you'll notice we can see a little further because of the laser scope's render distance increase. However, one very important thing is that the problem is fixed. So now if I run into a wall, if I have my face pressed against the wall, it'll be completely black. Now, this doesn't completely stop the issue if you're using a basic puppet, because with the basic puppet, you can do very amazing things, such as this. You can just go in that wall. So there are many ways to fix this problem, but I'll only be showcasing two for the tutorial. The first way is the easiest. You'll simply want to tweak the puppet, go into the upper body tab, and just cut off motion sensor movement. This makes it so you can't rotate the head by using your controller, kind of block players from seeing through the wall. However, players won't be able to see that change in geometry when they move their head around because they can't move their head around. It cuts a little bit out from the experience. Without exactly cutting out much of the experience is by tweaking the head to be collidable. Interestingly enough, the head and the neck are not collidable on the puppet. Now that we've made these collidable, we can try to move our head in, but we'll fail. This makes it so we can't see through the wall, and we can still rotate the head around and see what's around us without moving or having to rotate the whole body. So for recap, we've made an environment, we've made a playable character for that environment, we've created an array that allows us to see what the playable character is seeing on a 2D screen, so what more is there to do? Well, we could improve the resolution of the screen. However, laser scopes in Dreams has a very specific limit, and with that limit, we can't really create a very high resolution screen. However, we can still create enough resolution for the environment to be very easy to make out. In this example, I've created a very low resolution screen. Finally, I did a little bit of blending on the pixels, added instructions, and made the whole thing more of an asset. So it's easier to plop down in a creation if you want to use it. Here is the asset if you want to use it. Have a good day.